I'm pleased today to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Perry Kinkaide. I hope that most of you have read his bio in the newsletter that David has prepared, but I'd like to just mention a couple points from that. I've known Perry for a long time, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I have a very nominal presence on, I guess I'll call it an electronic app called LinkedIn. And every now and then I get a message from Joe or Peter or Mary or whatever, and I go and look. And part of that, I think it's there. They say, how many mutual acquaintances do you have to that particular thing? Well, I think at this point there are 3 out of 100 that have not listed Perry Kinkaide as part of their network. He seems to know anyone and everyone that is influential in this city, and he being an influence himself. He received his first degrees, graduate degrees at the University of Alberta, an MSc and a PhD. Went to work for KPMG Management Committee. He was an ADM with the Alberta government, and he didn't even slow down when he retired. He started the Alberta Council of Technologies. He was chairman of that, and a great voice for diversification of the Alberta economy away from our petroleum and natural gas, even though it has been the prime mover of our wealth and perhaps the prime mover of wealth in Canada. And so I give Perry great credit because he never did slow down. He's kind of like the energy bunny, you know, knock, 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 and keep going and keep going and keep going. He retired from his chairmanship of the Alberta Council of Technologies, but he started Kinkaide Enterprises. He holds a Friday afternoon series of webinars on topics of wide range of interest, and on occasions the webinar turns into a, what do you call it, just a chat. Drop in, sign in on Zoom, have a say or not as you wish, and let your opinions be known on a range of things. And I would encourage you in the future to tie in with Perry. Now, he's not going to be around for the summer. He's going back east for, I think he said 65th year high school reunion, but he'll be back in full force in September. He was recognized in July of 27 by Alberta Venture magazine as one of Alberta's 100 most influential, or I'm sorry, one of the 50 most influential. He was a recent recipient of Edmonton's Rotary Integrity Award. Currently lives in St. Albert with his wife of 51, 52 years, and enjoys playing golf, gardening, and his grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Perry Kinkaide.
Thank you, Bern.
Oh, there you are.
Bern and I went to graduate school together, so that's why he's so knowledgeable about my ills and evil. This presentation called Hype, Hucksters, and Hysteria can go in many different directions. If I was addressing a high school graduation, I'd be doing a very different presentation about change, because in reality, the presentation is about change, which you all know very well. I mean, I'm not talking to youngsters today, right? And you've seen change. I know when I left Grand Central Station in September in 1964 to come to Alberta, when no one in my town knew where Alberta was, and certainly I didn't. I mean, we looked in Algonquin, we looked in Acadia, and my mother, who had had 2 martinis, found it in Alberta, and we weren't quite sure she was accurate or not. But on arrival, I fell in love with Alberta. It wasn't hard to do. It was a place where the work ethic was alive and well. I got my PhD in brain research, biochemistry of memory, and neurophysiology of attention, deep into the cells of behavior, but I realized I wasn't an academic. I mean, you can get a PhD by being obsessive compulsive, which I was. But I realized on graduation that was really not my future. What I really wanted to get was to become a manager. I like project management. I like taking chaos and trying to make order out of it, basically an organizer. Oddly enough, the opportunities that I chose among several that ultimately became available, because initially on graduation, nobody wanted a brain researcher from Alberta. At least they didn't want me. And it was rather depressing. And then all of a sudden 3 job offers came at once, which created an extraordinary pressure because now I need to make a decision in terms of which direction my career should go. And I chose the Alberta government because Lougheed had just gotten elected, and the change that he had in mind, at least specifically, was to change the way we serve people with mental retardation, as it was called at the time, or developmental disabilities today, and to purge the usage of institutions, which scared the daylights out of parents who were on waiting lists. But when he asked those parents whether they wanted a bed today, tomorrow, or yesterday, and they said tomorrow, then why are you on the waiting list today? And for those of you that know how the health system operates, shortages drive demand. That's called supply management. But we found out that the parents were on the waiting list because they were told there were shortages, and they wanted the bed tomorrow, but they would take the bed today if there was a shortage. We realized that what we needed to do was provide alternatives. And so my job on being hired by the Alberta government was to develop community service alternatives for people with disabilities. Major change, and there were people that were scared. They called me a zealot. I got my A's at Colgate in speech and statistics. I didn't get another A in anything else. So one way or another, I had a silver tongue, and I think I was able to establish some level of trust, but always because we prepared the people, prepared the community, and developed the support services in advance. I wish to hell they'd do that for the homeless coming out of our prison system and coming out of our Indigenous communities, et cetera, but they haven't. And as a consequence, we talk about shortages today. So my welcome within the Alberta government was about 12 and a half years. That seemed to be my cycle. And in the course of that journey, I was also hired as director of regionalization and then director as an ADM when Justin's father threw NEP at us and scared the daylights out of us, a little bit of hype there. And most of you nodding your head now are not going to sleep, but remember what that event was like. And there were a number of events in my journey in Alberta besides NEP. There was the financial crash in 87. There was another one in the 90s. And then the internet arrived. And each one of these brought about a lot of hype, a lot of people huckstering us about, get on the NDP, get into the internet next year or you'll be out of work was the mantra for businesses. Well, it took 10 years before that really happened, before the adoption of the internet became the vehicle for administrative processing for small businesses. But the Chamber's message initially was, you gotta be on the internet next year or you're out of business. In any case, I left the Alberta government as a change agent when I was in charge of privatization and funding reform, which no one knew how to spell, and I don't think anybody really believed in the ideology, and I certainly didn't. But I saw privatization as a management option. And that was rather a creative twist on those that felt, well, you're supposed to be out there promoting ideology, which really wasn't my forte. My forte was to help people understand the forces and sources of change and what might be done to make the transition somewhat more orderly. And so I saw privatization as a management option, and when market forces were adequate, then market forces could control standards and costs without it having to be regulated by government or operated by government. And in any case, I went to Ottawa for a little while with the Eric Nielsen Task Force, tried to help them think through the relevance of privatization, the relevance of management in government instead of just maintaining status quo with administrators. One of my criticisms of government is it hires a lot of administrators to maintain the status quo, but calls them managers without adequate authority over supply and demand. And so the only thing they do control is supply. In any case, when I left the Alberta government thinking somewhat depressively that, where's my future now? I did ask the question, is there a way to make a living as a change agent? And said, yeah, that's consulting. Well, let me be one of those. And so I think I was 51 at the time, I made another career change, and it seemed another 12 and a half years. So I jumped into KPMG, and it was a thrill, because indeed it was about change management. But in this instance, it wasn't about change management serving those who don't want it, but serving those who do want it, because they would buy our services. And I had a ball. I was involved in saving the dental faculty at the university. I was involved in putting a tourism a system in place in Taiwan. I was involved in forest fire management in the Northwest Territories. You name it. As Gabe Shelley said to me one time, if you're going to serve Zulus tomorrow, go read about Zulus and you'll probably know enough in order to help them. Well, it's a little bit of snake oil or hucksterism, but the reality is, if you know the language and you know the fundamental issues, you can make a difference. So one of the things that really served me in the course of my career, which I'm going to talk about briefly, is the relevance of change and the accommodation of change through learning. Learning. How simple. Kindergarten, learning. Formal. Schools, life, learning. Seems to define what life is all about, at least for me. For me, life has been existential. The thrill and the joy of experiences, within limits, not with great risk, other than taking the train from Grand Central Station to Alberta without any fucking idea where I was really going. But I loved it. And with every change that I made, I found that I really, really enjoyed every one of them. I quiver a little bit in saying that because I've been blessed. I've been blessed in the choice of my wife. I've been blessed in the choice of Alberta. I was served well at the university. KPMG treated me well until they fired everybody over 51 because they went public. But we are facing today something fundamentally different than anything I've seen before. Bigger than the internet for sure. We have lived since the Middle Ages, not all of us. I mean, I'm 82, but there has been a change underway that was triggered in the Middle Ages called the knowledge economy. The age of reason, moving away from faith in the church to the relevance of universities and professionals and those who knew, those who left the Garden of Eden in search of knowing. That's the journey we've been on for 1,500 years. And yet we've got a new player. That new player is called artificial intelligence. Many of you know it as ChatGPT. How many of you have played with ChatGPT? Not a lot. I think all of you should. If I were to wrap this presentation up right now, I'd say, play with it. I've played with it. I've had it write stories for me and my granddaughter when we're waiting to pick up my grandson from the piano, and she's bored in the front seat of the car, so we feed it some information. Give me a character, give me a place, give me a emotion. ChatGPT, tell us a story. I used it one time prior to the election, the Alberta election. And I said to ChatGPT, what's the fundamental platform for NDP? What's the fundamental platform for PCs? What are the questions that they're likely to face at the door when they knock on the door during the election campaign? It gave me 10 different questions. I fed that to a party or a local party, and they used that in order to orient their candidates. I've used it to develop business plans for the hemp industry. I've used it to develop marketing plans. It's not perfect. It requires a little bit of tweaking, but then I have some of my life experience to share with it. If I wasn't going to be here today, can you put that up? Good morning, Probus. In the event I'm not able to join you today, I've asked my assistant to sit in my place. So here goes. Let's see what she has to say.
Thank you, Perry, for the introduction. And thank you to Probus for giving me this opportunity to speak today. As we delve into the capabilities and controversies of ChatGPT 4.0, we aim to dissect the layers of hype, address the Hucksters, and clarify the hysteria surrounding this advanced AI. Today's discussion is set to separate the factual from the sensational, and we will explore both the benefits and potential risks associated with this technology. AI is a powerful tool, and understanding its mechanisms, implications, and ethical considerations is essential for leveraging its capabilities responsibly. Let's embark on a detailed exploration of what AI like ChatGPT 4.0 means for us in various aspects of society and industry. This session is dedicated to uncovering the truth, dispelling myths, and fostering an informed discussion about the future of artificial intelligence. If I wasn't going to be here today, I asked ChatGPT before putting it into a video, what are the issues which we are facing today with artificial intelligence now challenging the knowledge economy, because it is smarter than a human being. It has access to literally any and all knowledge that has ever been digitized. Think about it.
any encyclopedia, anything been written in a journal, any newspapers, it's all there. Trillions of bits of information that it can access. And oh my God, you're bringing all sorts of stuff up. In any case, trillions of bits of information, not just in text, but in audio and in video as well. Okay, that's enough. We can stop that nonsense. So when you think about it, ChatGPT, when it is asked the question, and what it does, it looks at a piece of data or a word, and it looks at the relative relationship of that word to other words, and through probabilities, ultimately determines a concept. And it does it at the speed of light. So you can imagine how much information, how much knowledge it is going through when you ask it a question. And it's astounding, the answers that you get back. So it can tell stories, it can answer questions, it can shape creative images, it can put a video together in motion. Now you might say, well, it's not perfect. I can detect from the presentation that I was hoping you might see that it's rather vanilla. It's a little expressionless, rather bland, not as emotional as I get. So you would be able to detect that that really was artificial, but it's getting better. ChatGPT 4.0 just came out a week ago. The rate of change of the growth of artificial intelligence in the last 2 years, when in the first month, 100 million subscribers. 100 million. I mean, when the internet came in, it took quite a while to grow. ChatGPT, when it hit the market, 100 million in the blink of an eye. Now it's probably 1 billion. I don't know exactly what the number is. But the quality of what it is doing now is exceptional, whether it be in audio or video. What I did with that image is I said to ChatGPT, I've got a presentation to give it to Probus. I'd like you to tell me 20 different issues which I might share with them. And give me a little bit of a backgrounder, which I could then put up on a PowerPoint. And then I said to it, I went to another app called Murphy, and I said to Murphy, take that text and put it in audio so it has a voice. And then I could pick whether it was Phoebe or Cliff or someone from Australia or Austria or Germany accent or Austria. Give me the accent that's appropriate for the Probus group. And then give me the image. So then I put the image up and it created an image. All of that, almost in the blink of an eye, within an hour. Within an hour. It's astounding. If you haven't played with and play with it, don't take it too seriously, but it's in the prompts where you have fun. Oh, you can play around with it and screw around with it. It'll lie to you. I've used it. I had Freud. I got a picture of Sigmund Freud. It's up on my website. I have a picture of Sigmund Freud doing an interview with ChatGPT, concluding that the id is strong, the superego is strong. You've got to develop your ego. And I did a webinar, and in that webinar, the webinar was a discussion about ChatGPT from a Freudian perspective. You can do almost anything with it. And some of it's you'd rather not do. Teenage boys could have a real ball with it. I won't go any further than that. You can just use your imagination. It's astounding. But it's scary. Because this is change, and it's change at a rate that is far greater than anything I've seen before. I talk about the future of the professions. A profession is a profession because government has given it exclusive rights of practice for engineering or for teaching or for architecture, so that you know, because you don't have all that knowledge, that this professional can be trusted because they're certified. Artificial intelligence, AI, hasn't been certified by anybody. It's moving too fast for the regulators to step in. So the trust has to be at your level. You have to be wise enough to draw on your own life experience, to know there's hype out there, there's hucksters out there, and there's hysteria that goes along with it. So it's up to you as an individual until such time as the regulator steps in, and I'm not quite sure how this is going to get regulated. Because in the hands of the individual, of which there are billions, this can go in many different directions. And the rate of change and the amount of capital flowing into the market's in the billions. And so new apps are being developed all the time. Look at the world of law. You've probably seen pictures of a law office with all the books on the wall that contain all the case law. ChatGPT can go through that in the blink of an eye. Now, sometimes it hallucinates and it imagines something, in which case you've got to be, as judges are now, alert, as professors at universities are alert, when someone is bringing them something that ChatGPT has created that may not be, that not have been sourced by the individual. And I'm not, between you and I don't particularly give a damn whether it comes from ChatGPT or comes from a person. I want information. I want it quickly, I want it cheap, but I want it accurate. And there are some of the issues. And it doesn't take rocket science or a brain surgeon to know that hype, hucksterism, and hysteria should be of concern to all of us. So let me flip through the PowerPoint, I think. By the way, if you want to look at some of the webinars, and they're fun, believe me, I mean, we take them seriously when we have them, and they run for about an hour, so you can listen to them on the radio or in your car if you wish, but go on up there and you'll see the one I put up there for Probus. It's not this presentation, but it's the one that ChatGPT gave me, and I had Phoebe, I called it a her, I had Phoebe do the voice, but it's up there. There's another one I took all of my newsletters since September, and I said to ChatGPT, summarize them and give me the highlights, which it did. And so in 16 minutes, it gave me an audio that I put in the newsletter the other day. Click here and you get that overview. There are so many different ways you can use the tool. And you don't have to be in business to use it. You can play with it at home. It can tell you stories. Probably put you to sleep at night. Does a great job with Rockabye Baby. Oh, never mind, I won't do that. So, if I were to walk you through the presentation quite quickly, I would say what you've already assumed. We're seeing rapid advances in artificial intelligence. Speed. We used to say speed kills. Now, I'm not sure that this speed kills. I think this speed develops. What you're seeing here is a market looking, a market of producers looking at the market of buyers and saying, we want to win that market, not through evil and not through fraud, but through service and through providing the information quickly and accurately. I think the guidelines or the guardrails is that the market itself for buying and using is going to run away from the ransomwares and the fraudsters. I think you as a seniors group know better than the 18-year-old where risk is and that there is risk out there. You can provide guidance to your own grandchildren. If your grandchildren saw you playing with this, you'd give them an opportunity to see that they don't need to go behind the barn to play with this. This can be done out in the open and you can guide them and help them and play with it. It's generated significant excitement, also come with misconceptions, and that's each one of these is an issue in itself. Hype in itself is an issue. Hucksterism is an issue. Hysteria is an issue. And when you start combining them together, you see how much chaos is potentially out there where hype, hucksterism, and hysteria are all occurring simultaneously. You can imagine people not wanting to use this or to be scared or to scare others off. It's new, it's unfamiliar, it's volatile, and it's chaotic. But the opportunities and the threats abound. Caution is warranted. One of my main points. Hype versus reality. I'll let you read these as I scroll through. Sure, claims are exaggerated. That's what salesmen do. And we're all aware of that. I must say that when I go to watch CNN, I'm getting tired of all the marketing. And it's all for senior stuff too. I mean, every part of my body and every disease you can imagine. General AI versus narrow AI. Generative AI, which will be, some may say it's already arrived, that when AI has super intelligence and is training itself, because it has the capability, since it's a learning tool that's called learning language models, it has the capability of training itself. When it starts training itself, where does it go? What are the ethical guidelines that will determine how generative AI evolves? Some are afraid that the human being will be replaced. In my own personal opinion, I won't give a damn. Why should it care about us? Just because we care about us. And we evaluate everything relative to whether or not it's good for mankind. I'm not sure that generative AI will necessarily have that as an ethic. And I don't think that is necessarily be bad. It might just ignore us. And when you think about it, and this is Perry speak. What we do in our webinars and what we do in my seances. I call them seances because we sip wine, which is spirits. We do that on Friday at the Chateau Louis if you want to join us. When you think about the fact that we can send data out into the universe at the speed of light, we can send our DNA out. We can send our genome out in data and have it reconstituted someplace out in the universe. I caution Elon Musk to not do that until such time as we learn how to manage evil and how to manage aggression. Because mankind hasn't really done a particularly good job, even though the United Nations tried. We still haven't found a vehicle, other than maybe mediation and collaboration, which take a lot of agreement just to get people into the room to decide they're going to solve a conflict together. I want to be careful about sending mankind out into space and infecting space or the universe with our weaknesses. There are those who will be overestimating AI and its capabilities in the short term, but believe me, it's learning, and it's learning fast, and it is adjusting, and it's adapting. So yes, these are risks, but there's two sides to the story, and caution again is my advice. Data dependency. It requires vast amounts of data. I use the word trillion. It's in the trillions of bits of information. It's all in bits and what are called coins. But it uses this information in data, and if you're a small businessman or a small businesswoman and you want to get into using AI, you've got to digitize your documents because you've got to put it into a data form. And when Joalent back there, who works with me with the Alberta Council of Technology's company, and we work with chambers of commerce and small businesses, we talk about step number one is to digitize your data. And from there on, we can begin to get into what you need to know about your customers that you never realized before, but it's in the data. You just don't have the capability of doing the analysis, at least at the level that ChatGPT or AI can. There are biases. There are programmers that are helping it build the algorithms or the tools to do the data sorting and building of the concepts. And if there are biases built in, they're going to show up in the answers and the way in which it works. So one needs to be aware that there are biases because it's human beings that are putting this data together. As recently as last week, a breakthrough has occurred where what are called neural networks. You have some concept of the brain full of all these neurons and all connected together. Well, in a way, that's how artificial intelligence works, except it works with switches all over the place. Multiple layers called neural networks. So it works in a very similar way. What they've been now able to do is to see how these neural networks actually form concepts, just like our brain forms what are called gnostic units, which is a concept. And as we grow up, these gnostic units are formed in our brain. Our brain comes full of concepts, just as the neural networks become full of concepts. Well, if I have a neural concept called a gnostic unit in my brain, which is messed up because I was robbed at a bank and I've now got PTSD, what are you going to do? They're going to give me therapy. And that therapy will try to modify my gnostic unit or my experience in such a way to give me comfort again. Well, they can now go into neural networks because now they begin to see how the neural networks are working and modify the concepts. And the example that was provided was the San Francisco Bridge. That's a concept. And ChatGPT or artificial intelligence will have associated with that concept San Francisco, weather, the baseball team, etc. So that concept, it will have primary, secondary, tertiary levels. So when San Francisco shows up in your question, all those other concepts emerge and it works its way through. Well, what if it's got a mistake? Well, what if it's got a bias and it's got more black people or more Mexicans? Or what if there's a bias written there and someone decides to modify the neural network just as you would modify therapy? Someone's playing games with the concepts. And maybe that's a good thing because The neural networks may not have built a concept that is diverse, inclusive, and equity. So once we start playing around with neural networks, maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's bad. Who has the power to modify the artificial intelligence? An important question. Can government step in? Should government step in? Does government have the capacity? Is there such a thing as a worldwide government that needs to grab this thing and say it's mankind as a whole that's at risk, not Russia or Mexico or Taiwan? I don't know. I don't think it's going to go there. Not the way I've seen mankind evolve. Is collaboration is a hell of a thing to get together just between people, much less between our institutions. How to explain it? It operates as a black box, and that's what it's just getting into, is they've now been able to get into the black box and see how concepts are formed within the neural network. Obviously, ethical concerns. What are the ethics of artificial intelligence? Are the ethics human, or the ethics invented by AI itself once superintelligence emerges and survival of mankind is not its primary ethic? It may be survival of itself. Survival may not even be a relevant concept. It might be more of a developmental concept. Ethics may be built on the ethics of growing and learning and evolving or exploring. Like from Grand Central Station to, I won't go there again. There's a growing need for regulatory frameworks, which I've alluded to. There's the concern people have about, my goodness, if the knowledge economy is coming to an end and the professions are at risk, because all of a sudden I don't have exclusivity in my practice anymore. ChatGPT is better than the healthcare professional. I know my doctor out in Spruce Grove uses ChatGPT in order to do the initial diagnosis, which a nurse would otherwise do. That's not the be-all and the end-all, but he uses that for screening. And I've talked to a number of professionals that will give a series of questions to their patient or to their client that are then answered, fed into ChatGPT to get a profile of that person or their needs. That may be putting jobs at risk. It may be that ChatGPT is an alternative or a replacement or an aid. IBM and others would like you to believe it's an aid, not a replacement. That artificial intelligence will be working in partnership with human beings. But somebody out there wanting to make money maybe a little bit less than the public services are paying to the professionals may come up with a cheaper alternative, in which case the market evolves for that product as opposed to the human professional. So there's grounds for concern, but there are others that say, we've made the transition. Technology is always changing and human beings are adapting. So let's not get hysterical. Let's talk about learning and the relevance of learning and transitions. I, for one, believe that to be the case, by the way, and it's a byproduct of every 12 years I go through another cycle. And I've always come out on the positive side. Right, Jim? Jim knows. He's watched me. Security risks. AI systems can be vulnerable to adversarial attacks. There is what's called ransomware. There are fraudsters out there using these tools, not for ethical purposes, but for security, taking millions, if not billions, out of the banking system. There is need for policing to keep up. And every now and then we read about another breakthrough about how the police are using these tools now in order to catch the fraudsters and ensure our security. There's an environmental impact. The amount of power needed by a engine that is running a artificial intelligence is high. You know, like I was talking about billions of transactions in fractions of a second. That requires energy. That's one of the risks of the continued evolution of artificial intelligence as it sweeps into the globe, is the amount of energy that it consumes. That could be, in fact, an impediment to its rate of growth. It could have an impact on the environment if we don't have adequate forms of power. And those of you who know me and watch the webinars have seen how many webinars we've done on the relevance of fusion energy, as not fission, but fusion, which is now well within the possibility before 2050, which doesn't have any emissions as byproducts. So watch fusion as an emerging technology as the demand for power increases. Hype from hucksters, hysteria and fear, it's all there. Humans in the loop, many applications still require human oversight to ensure accuracy. Who will these humans be? What is the certification required by a programmer? It doesn't exist today. It's what a corporation seeks in that individual who will have access to the development of the apps which become the artificial intelligence tools that you and others will be using. This is a big one. So often we feel we're in a competition. I remember a minister when I first joined the government saying you need to understand the linkage between communication, cooperation, and collaboration. This is how you get people to work together. How often I've said, if you can only get adversaries to do a project together, let them do something together. Have a birthday party. Do something where they can in fact see that they share common values, and from there they may then work together to solve a problem of mutual interest for which they're divided. And we live in a society today where the divisiveness, where the ideologies seem to be so disparate, and how important it is to get collaboration going again. But we seem to be caught in this split where we need to communicate, we need to cooperate, we need to collaborate. Interdisciplinary collaboration will be very important in fields like computing sciences, ethics, law, any of the knowledge domains. This is the demand. This is what we should be telling our kids. Education is not the be-all and the end-all of learning, it's just the beginning. Life in itself is probably the best teacher you're ever going to have. But somehow we've got so caught up in the box of the teacher and the school that that's the relevance of learning without them appreciating it's a lifelong undertaking. Transparency and accountability, the importance for OpenAI, which is the owner and one of the companies that is moving us at the speed of light into this new world of artificial intelligence, needs to be transparent. There is a battle inside OpenAI on whether it should be for profit or for mankind. And that's been wrestled with. And it appears that those felt it should be for mankind and transparent seem to have lost out to those that feel it should be for profit. And that was a major battle. We've been wrestling with this, and society will continue to wrestle with it. Open research and collaboration, how delightful it would be if all of what is going on is out in the open, and governments and people could all be watching and seeing and making their democratic judgment on whether or not it's moving in the direction that we feel is consistent with our human values. That would be called transparent. It's not transparent, not in all instances. Taking a long-term perspective, not the short term. The short term is about hysteria and hype and hucksters and what we have in the foreground. But in the background, where things move slowly, we have long-term expectations. Where are we really going? What is the destiny? Where is artificial intelligence taking us? I think we need to educate the public about AI's true capacities and limitations, and it's crucial to counteract the hype and the hysteria, which will only either push us away or put us in an environment of fear. And when you're in an environment of fear, you're vulnerable, because someone says, I'll take that fear away with a new law, a new regulation, a new app. We need to keep fear muted. Who's most vulnerable? Our kids and our grandkids. It's something you can do when you go home, is to open up OpenAI, look at ChatGPT, play with it. Play with it with your kids. My grandkid, what's my grandson do when he comes home? I told my granddaughter, where I tell her, we put stories together. She's learned how to be a creative writer. He loves automobiles. Well, my wife now is immobile. I'm a 24/7 caretaker. He goes to the internet and he looks for accessible wheelchair vans. And then he comes to me and shows me all of the options, what the pricing are, where I can buy them, and where they're located. All of that he's found using ChatGPT. SMEs, the small businesses need to prepare. It's not going to be 10 years from now before the internet has impact on your business. It's going to be a lot quicker than that. And the competition is extraordinary. Questions, comments, your experience? That's what I do. That's what I love. I don't, the Kinkaide Enterprise, or KEI, is not a for-profit, it's a for-profit venture, but when I do the webinars and I do the seances and I do the newsletters, there's no revenue in that. I do it for the fun of it. Like a busman's holiday. He loved to ride buses after retiring. I love to research. I love to explore. I love to share. Remember, I got my A's at Colgate in statistics and what? Speech. Yeah, no surprise. Little did I know. That and organizing. So, if you want to have some fun, go to keinetwork.net. You'll see webinars, you'll see newsletters. Click there, and you can look at years of what we're doing and as we play in this world of change. I love it. Change stirs the mind, stirs the brain, drives me into new relationships. And again, I thank Bern for inviting me to meet you today. Thank you. I know we probably run out of time. I don't keep track. Yeah, go ahead.
As I listen to you and the progress from the distant past, I'm going to mention to you, and that is a number of the conversations you and chemist Bob Crawford.
Yeah, sure.
And he was my chemistry professor.
Okay.
And all of the things that went forward from there. And now I see this unfolding in front of me, and it's really freaking exciting.
Yeah, we've talked today about artificial intelligence. We could have been talking about fusion energy, which will transform the energy industry. We could have been talking about cell therapy. I mean, one of the presentations that I give is I ask an audience like you, now that we understand cell, the way the cell works, the stem cells, that we have the capacity to recreate life and to grow limbs. How many of you would opt for everlasting life if it was granted? No surprise. I've done this hundreds of times. Maybe 8 people have raised their hand. So then I ask another, how many of you would opt for another day? Most people raise their hand. Well, I'll take another day. Right? Okay, which one don't you want anymore? That's it. But it tells you something about what life is about. Life is about experiences. And once you've had enough, and they begin to become boring, maybe 100 years is about right. God got it right somehow. 100 years seems to be working biologically just fine, thank you very much. So that's my little short speech on cell therapy. Yeah, go ahead.
You talked about your grandchildren and how, they are using ChatGPT. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on how that will change their social life and their emotional life, if that is something that they're using as opposed to what my experience was.
Well, I'm very concerned with what Facebook has been doing to kids and the erosion of their social skills. Fortunately, with good parenting in their environment, ChatGPT is not done behind the barn or it's done with the family. Now, an example of this is over Thanksgiving we were at dinner, my wife and myself and my 2 grandkids and their parents. And we were having a chat. I have chats with everybody. We're having a discussion about something esoteric of some form, and we're having a discussion, but the kids didn't know it was a discussion. They thought it was an argument. And the next thing you know, Sophia has left the table, and she's gone over to Alexa to get the answer and come back to the table with the answer to the debate we're having. So I think families need to play the role of good parents. And parenting, when you look at some of the webinars we did last fall on homelessness, on education failing, and on healthcare reform, I am very concerned with the lack of parenting. The lack of giving the discipline, the lack of giving the insight, the lack of reinforcing learning. If we are failing parents by giving kids allowance and filling up their time with other things and making them so busy that they never get bored or never walk into a woods or never look at the sky, I'm concerned that parenting is one of the fundamental issues which we need to address and make sure that it either gets restored or gets protected. Grandparents, again, play a fundamental role. I am very lucky that my 2 boys live in my hometown, that I can be part of the grandparenting. But in the mobile society we live, my parents are back in New York when I was raising my kids. If it wasn't for my wife's parents, who came from the Czech Republic here, and raise them in a different set of values than I was used to, but it worked. I had grandparenting. I know of its value. I don't think we as a society understand how important, and I don't care what that social worker at the School of Social Work told me at the University of Calgary, that the state will take over and become the alternative to grandparents. That really does concern me, because I think that is a drive among us, that there are those that believe that human beings are failing and that the state can do a better job. That's called the welfare state. And I think the welfare state is in trouble. Go look at the homelessness and you'll see one of the byproducts of when we don't have enough supply and we don't spend enough time on managing demand. All we talk about is shortages, and we need more and more and more. At some point in time, it has to stop. And we need to get back to understanding the relevance of serving people as individuals. Yeah.
Can you start me off? I'm the one that has not done ChatGPT,
Yeah.
period. Can I just go into Google, type that in, and hope for the best?
It will be right there. It'll say, try me.
I have to answer that to the one I sleep with, and that's the bigger problem. Because she's gonna be, what have you done to my computer? Our computer.
It's so easy. It's quite innocent. Some of the apps require you to provide personal information. You don't necessarily want to go there. I mean, one of the concerns I have with Facebook is people have been putting out into the public all sorts of personal information.
Yeah.
ChatGPT or artificial intelligence in the hands of the wrong person will take that information and can create identities
Yes.
that look real. And that's of concern, yeah.
Do you recommend people put false information into those sites?
Probably some people do. That's what Facebook is. These young kids today have different identities. Their identities on Facebook are what they would like to be known as and how they like to be seen. That is of concern, is our young kids growing up in an environment of Facebook and growing up with a false identity and a false sense of security and a false sense of their social relevance. Getting connected with real human beings is an important part of our life's experience. I didn't go to Venezuela. I went to Alberta, and it was okay.
Thank you very much. On the part of the club, I'd like to say thank you for your presentation. So my 30-year-old daughter was telling me this was a very important person, and she was an influencer. And I said, well, what did she do to be an influencer? Like, this is the word you're using now, talking about knowing language. And thank you very much for helping us learn some more of the language, because that's important. But she told me, well, nothing. She gets lots of likes. And I went, that's not what an influencer is. So yes, having dialogue. She didn't agree with me at all, but we will still continue to dialogue, but very definitely you are an influencer. Thank you very much for coming to speak to us, and we will be sending out a token of our appreciation to you. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, I never know where these little presentations are going to go. You start thinking about them months ahead of time, and thank you for the early notice. And I'll tell you how many times I redid thinking where I wanted to take this. And one of them is up on the website, which I asked ChatGPT for content. But it wasn't until I looked at you and I was sitting in the back of the room and I thought, this is not a presentation about small business or corporations or government. This is a presentation about people. And so in that regard, thank you.
Thank you.